Welcome to the Recruitment Rollercoaster podcast. My name is Hisham Azuz, and today I'm joined by Rob Hanna, who is the owner of Kissooncarr. Got it right?
Got it right.
I was practicing that for like 2 minutes with Rob, so thank you. Rob, we are in, let's set the scene. So we're in a boardroom, this is a meeting room in, what street are we on?
We're on 1 King Street.
1 King Street, so right by bank, really nice offices.
Yeah, we're very privileged to be here, I have to say. Yeah, very nice offices, just off Cheapside. So
yeah,
for those
it's nice.
Yeah,
really
exactly.
cool. So that's where we are today. But as I was saying, Rob, where I always love to start, how did you get into recruitment?
The golden question. You probably haven't heard this response before, but I always didn't wake up one day thinking I was going to be a recruiter.
Yeah.
No, I fell into recruitment very much so. I was actually got a call from a rec to rec whilst I was at university. And I thought they were pitching me a job for Procter & Gamble at the time.
Oh, wow, okay.
They were talking about sort of marketing, advertising, sales, and kind of really sold this role to me.
Sold you the dream.
And anyway, I sort of stumbled along King William Street and found myself at a recruitment firm interview. And very much from there, I quickly learnt about the industry and fell into it. But the honest answer is I was very much given a call by a rec to rec post-university and fell into it. It wasn't something that I had initially considered
what did you
as
do
a career.
at uni?
I did a business management degree with French. French is somewhat passable now at best.
Really?
But yeah, that's what I did at Leeds University because it was one of the, at the time a good university for employability on the business school and sort of the top 10.
Did you always want to go uni? Like, was that always on the plan or the agenda? Or?
It was. I guess it was. Following A levels, it was something I was really keen to try and pursue. Not just so from the sort of academic perspective, but I think from the sort of social perspective as well, and the general character building.
Where are you from originally?
So I'm from Leicestershire originally, and that was one of my passions for setting up Kissooncarr, in fact, because my grandfather ran a very successful law firm in the 1950s called Rich & Carr Solicitors. So I always had a passion to kind of emulate his success in business. And
well, we're definitely going to get into that.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
exactly.
Okay, so fell into recruitment. A rec to rec called you had no idea what the hell was going on, and then from when I looked at your LinkedIn, you ended up at the infamous S3.
Indeed, yeah. So I had good time at S3.
How long was you there for?
So I was there for 18 months.
Okay.
And I probably joined at a very interesting time, shall we say. I joined in the 2008 Lehman's crash.
Oh, wow.
So, first day, foot through the door, I'm seeing people carrying PCs, seeing people sort of, walking in and out of the office, frantically screaming, Lehman's is going down, Lehman's is going down, headhunt.
Yeah.
And that meant nothing to me at the time. I didn't understand. I'd barely had a training course at that point, but it really kind of chucked me in at the deep end, and you had to kind of learn your stripes, and I have to say S3 was really good at kind of the fundamental basics training of recruitment, and my first manager at the time really kind of looked after me and sort of put an arm around me at the time, because there was a chance where there was going to be redundancies. The market had been
what
tough.
market did you go into?
So I've actually diversified across 4 markets.
So what did you do when you started?
Started originally in oil and gas, in the energy space.
Okay, and you did that for 18 months?
I did that for 18 months.
Okay.
And then following that, and that was a good experience, my boss actually left to join a business that he was a director in, a boutique business, and I had a very good relationship with them, and I kept that sort of relationship, and I always wanted to sort of explore. I'd been in a big global environment, a big recruitment industry, and I wanted to try something different. So he sort of suggested coming to join them, so I did.
Okay, cool.
And that's sort of how I made my sort of first move in the recruitment sector.
Before we get into that quickly, what I always just like to sort of try and understand and cover, I think obviously I said to you before we spoke and did this, but what really planting the seed to start this was just my experience in the first year. It was extremely difficult, extremely tough. So how was your first 12 months in recruitment?
So I'm very open to people and saying I was very much a first year flop.
Okay.
I didn't take to recruitment naturally whatsoever. And I think that was quite a shock to me, because I'd always been sort of in sports teams, played at quite competitive
always
level.
Done all right.
Yeah, or not in an arrogant way, but I'd always thought, I was confident to back myself. So I thought, it's as easy. It's just finding people jobs, which we all know it's not. Yeah. There's a lot more to it. I struggled. I really kind of didn't grasp the basics as quickly as some of the other people would. My general qualification skills, my meeting skills, my understanding of my market and how to get good at the job, really shadowing the top billers, really learning from them via osmosis, all those things you should be doing, I wasn't really doing. And so I wasn't
Why wasn't you doing them? Did you think was there an element of not having humility at that point and thought you knew better, or?
I just think I didn't start, one thing was I wasn't as focused as looking back on it now, the way I planned my days. Yeah, I was very reactive. I was going to work. I thought I was doing well, but I wasn't getting the results, And, in that environment, you are targeted on targets naturally. And, I wasn't kind of billing what I should have been billing. So, I was lucky that I had a supportive team at the time that sort of said, you know what, they backed me, because I think it could have gone the other way.
Was you doing the right activities and were you giving it a go?
I was doing the activities, but I probably wasn't doing them to the standard that was needed to really build. Because you meet some people who were wonderful billers in their first year and it really could up. I'm genuinely not that case.
So when you say it was a flop, what did you build in your first year?
I probably built about 100k in my first year.
Mate, that isn't that bad. do you know how much I built in my first year?
How much did you build?
I'm very open. 24k.
But what was your market?
Mate, there's no way I'm blaming the market in that scenario. It was just really difficult, mate. I think so. I recruited in the insurance sector.
Yeah.
I was in a business of between 8 and 12 people. And I basically just did everything that the people around me told me to do. And the thing is, why I didn't lose my job was just simply because I sat next to the owner of the business, and I absolutely worked my socks off in that first year. Like, it wasn't an element of not listening, thinking I knew better, these things. And they just kept saying to me, Hisham, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing the right activities. It will pay off. And obviously you may have experienced it now when you hire for your business, which we'll get onto. But I really experienced that tipping point. But yeah, mate, that's. I mean, 100k in your first year isn't the end of the world. What were the expectations?
I had a target of around sort of 160 to 180k.
Really? Was it perm or contract?
It was permanent. So I've always mainly been permanent. I've done sort of an element of contract as well. But yeah, so in my eyes of the people that I was working with, I was sort of halfway off target. Yeah. And, I joined S3 as well at the time because it was a big brand. You're surrounded by top billers. You always want to push yourself to be the best, in my opinion. And so, I was surrounded by people, who are billing, 500-600, or people who have got sort of, 100 runners on a temp desk and it's lucrative.
Some really impressive people.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess before we move on to the next part then, I'm always just so fascinated by asking sort of this whole S3 environment, what it was, just because now I'm moving to, so I used to recruit in a small business, as I was saying, in Hayward Heath, so outside of London, and then obviously moving to London, I've been exposed to this sort of whole world of recruitment in London, right? And obviously S3 is a huge brand. Yeah. So I'm just before we move on, I'd love to sort of get from you going from not knowing what recruitment was and these things to then being in an environment that so many people speak highly of and has produced so many businesses and so many successful people. What was your perception and experience of working in the S3 environment? So you just mentioned a bit of it there, but how would you describe the experience and that whole time?
I think S3 was a genuinely great experience. And from my cohort as well, there's probably 10 business owners just alone from people I started with. So it's true. What I think I enjoyed about S3 at the time was they really do focus in on training. I mean, I didn't know, recruitment isn't rocket science. People can dress it up however they want. It's not. It's simplifying the job. I didn't know what an open question was when I first started there. I didn't know how to effectively qualify, and they really do work you to understand how to get good at the job. Yeah. So I was very lucky in terms of they invested in me in terms of sort of formal training, and I was very grateful for that. And then they also give you a lot of opportunity to get involved. So, and they put you in a team and they kind of really do push you to do as well as you can. So I think
it's really high standards.
Yeah, it's high standards, and I think that's what I enjoyed about my time there. But I would say the training of actually going through the sub practice areas of what it takes to be a good recruiter, is second to none. And they generally, you'd have catch ups, you'd have sort of progress meetings, you'd have targets, you'd have a vision of where you needed to go. So I think the whole makeup of being in the global company and kind of being surrounded by top performers, but them also giving you the platform to get good at the job.
That's really interesting.
They married together very nicely for me. And so I was actually very grateful for that experience.
So you built a really good relationship with your manager, you said, and then he went off and set up on his own.
So he went to join another a business that he was basically become a director in as well, where there was sort of, one other owner of the business. Yeah. And as I say, I kept that relationship. But that was in a completely different sector. So,
you went oil and gas, and then what sector?
Yeah, so I had a year and a half of oil and gas sort of energy experience, and then I moved into procurement. Procurement and supply chain. So, and did I know much about procurement and supply chain at the time? Absolutely not.
You knew recruitment now, though.
But I knew recruitment, and that's the one thing I'd say is the recruitment has a very good transferable skill set. So many things that you can get from recruitment, and I joined there, and I really took to it. It was a market that...
so how long was you there for, just to sort of...
So I started there, I joined there as sort of a consultant stroke senior consultant.
Okay.
And I was there for the best part of 5 years.
Oh, okay, so a real solid stint.
Yeah, and again, I really enjoyed my time there. So I progressed, I was the first organically grown director of the business. Okay. So from joining as a consultant, very much sort of within that 5-year window into my sort of 3rd and a half, 4th year being made a director.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that journey because it was completely different to the S3. You know, S3, big global outfit, everywhere, all the infrastructure, everything you would like, to moving to an office where, at the time, we're in the basement, and I really enjoyed being part of that.
Part of the whole
because I learned the directors there, one of the directors in particular, probably one of the best recruiters I've ever had the experience of working with.
Really?
You could get so close to them and you can learn from them, you can shadow them. And so, from moving from a basement to being on sort of, Fleet Street, moved to the office, from sort of, a few people to sort of 20, 30 people, going on that journey, I really, really enjoyed it.
Cool. So let's unpack that.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely, but then just so then, I know the timelines and just to think. So then, so you was there for 5 years, and then was it after there that you then set up your own recruitment business?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Exactly. So
before we get onto that, then, 5 years, and by the time you left, you was at director level. You started as a consultant, senior consultant. So I guess the first thing, and how did you deal with then the transition of the market? Because a lot of people obviously. As anyone, I think I'd be the same. Like if I had built up relationships and people for 18 months, 12 months, 24 months, however long, to then chuck that away or whatever you want to call it, to go into a different market and these things, obviously that's a real challenge, right? Because it's pretty much standing from zero again. Do you get what I mean? So firstly, how was that transition? Because there'll be a lot of people listening that maybe considering a move or considering a different market, whatever, but that obviously is a huge thing to think about. Yeah. So how did you deal with that?
Well, I think firstly I had trust. Yeah. I had trust in the people that I was joining. So I wasn't joining a brand new business in the procurement space. It had been, a very established, high performing.
That's a really important factor, isn't it? So although you were starting it from zero potentially, but the people that you was working alongside and supporting, had a recognised brand or had been doing it for a while.
They had
so it wasn't a complete cold desk?
No, it wasn't a complete cold desk. They had built up a fabulous business, and worked day and night to do that and to achieve that. So, I had a previous relationship which was helpful, and I had a trust there, as I mentioned.
Fair enough. That's a really good point.
But I also, a big part of this, and one thing I say is you've got to be prepared to take risks, throughout your careers. If you want to kind of push yourself and get to the highest level you can get to, you've got to take risks, and for me, I wanted to exploit a boutique environment. I wanted to take a risk, and so I took it, and I put myself out of the comfort zone. I kind of knew I'd have to kind of really work 10 times harder than everyone else who's already in that procurement space to stand a chance, and I was prepared to do that.
So how did you start learning about the market? How did you do that?
Obviously, I've got a lot of training internally, but then you've got to read around the market, and the other thing is we all know your candidates are your source of information, right? Yeah. So getting back to your point about the recruitment skills and knowing recruitment prior to going in with your eyes wide open, one candidate can be a source of a lot of information.
Sure.
Though, I really, at that point, I understood how to qualify candidates. I knew how to extract information. I knew how to process that information. I knew how to use that in part of my own business development strategy when trying to win clients. And I knew that in terms of how I could use that for my own personal branding. And also the company was very good at supporting you in terms of getting you in front of events and getting in front of key people. So there was was a lot of kind of ways, but I had to be proactive. It didn't come to me. I think if you're going to take a risk, you've got to be prepared to be proactive, and you've got to be prepared to fail as well. Luckily enough, and I had failings. I talked to you about my first year flop. I didn't, comparatively to other people around me in that environment. This time I had to go in as well. I had to really go for it. But it wasn't, again, I didn't smash my first 3 months. I took to it, but it sort of took 3 to 6 months to really get going, and then it kind of kicked in.
Yeah, okay, cool. So then what was the timeline of you being senior consultant? And then what was the next stage after that? What did you then progress to?
So then it would go to sort of principal. So every year I basically managed to sort of hit a promotional target. So it would be principal consultant, manager, senior manager, director.
Okay. Cool.
And it was a very.
So was it all just done on billings, basically?
Of course, billings are important, and I think we can't shy away from that. You do need to hit billing targets, but I think when you're in a boutique or in a smaller firm as well, it's important that you've got the interests of the company.
Yeah,
so
there's
you've
other things as well.
Yeah, exactly. So as you get more senior, you're probably taking on people under your wing.
Okay.
So it's not just about your billing; it's about, can you get others to bill, and can you get them to be developed, and can you get them to improve? I think, what can you do for the company generally in terms of building the overall brand, in terms of actual, what can you do more to add value than just being someone who's, okay, I'm a director, but actually what else are you doing?
Just treating it like your own business.
Yeah, and it had a good sort of family feel to it, and yeah, exactly, treating it like your own business. So billings, you can't progress without billing. That's a given.
Yeah.
But you need to do more, and little things. You'd want to hold your hand up if you wanted to be the social secretary, or if you wanted to get involved in a particular event, or if you wanted to sponsor something. All of these things. If you hold your hand up and actually add value to the company, then that's
Put
also
yourself out there.
Yeah, exactly. That's well rewarded.
So you mentioned about the first year flop. Like what was so assuming that you progress each time then. So it seems like was it a pretty positive experience over those 5 years in terms of, did you keep hitting your targets? Billings increased.
Yeah.
Overall performance increased.
As I say, I think I was surrounded. Particularly the owner of the company was one of the best recruiters I've worked with. And
why
so
is that? Let's quickly talk about that.
I think just really knew how to do good recruitment and never cut corners.
Okay.
Never cut corners. Was very good at sort of drilling that into people in terms of how to do best in class recruitment. From little things to making sure that direct dials. You knew the direct dial at the time. Now it's obviously more, but all the little fundamental basics, from administrative to influencing to qualifying to closing to continuous closing. Really all of those skill sets were really ingrained into you, and I think that was really great to see, and really helped you move from a sort of substandard biller to a top biller.
Let's break that down a bit.
Yeah,
I'm thinking people listening makes sense, but what? So you just said that those things there, which you did. I just think that's really interesting, and everything that you said resonated. But I'm thinking, okay, let's just make that crystal clear and unpack that. So the key things there that you mentioned, a good biller or great biller to a top class biller. How would you break those down from what you saw from this chap that clearly was a bit of a mentor to you and had a big influence on you?
Well, I think firstly, I look at traits in the individual.
Okay.
I think the person that I was sort of emulating and wanted to be part of, hard work. I think they really were hardworking. I know that sounds like a bit of a cliche, but they really were exceptionally hardworking and committed, and had their own internal drive.
Okay.
And I think really to be a successful recruiter, you need to have an internal drive.
What do you mean by internal drive?
You've got to, I openly admit that I've got a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I want to be, the best I can be. And so, I think something that motivates you, have your own goals and an internal drive that's going to drive you day to day. Because I see so many people, what I describe as sort of commute and coast. Okay. And so they go to work, they do the job.
Commute and coast, I like that.
Yeah, exactly. but it's there and everyone can see it. And there's people in my sort of networks that I see it, and I try and actually mentor people how to move out of that mindset actually, just because they're in their job and I just get the same bonus every year. It's like, well, what more can you do? So actually trying to change people's mindsets a little bit.
So work ethic.
So work ethic for sure. I think subject matter expert, really knowing their market.
And how did he achieve that? How did you do that?
They achieved that by basically networking. Yeah, okay. They were a key networker. And then I think it comes down to fundamental recruitment skills. Okay. And I think one of the best recruitment skills, well, two of the best recruitment skills that they had were objection handling and influencing. Nice. I think we get day-to-day objections. You know, a top biller can learn. There was a phrase we had called "learn to love objections."
Learn to love objections.
Yeah, because so many young recruiters, I used to get scared when I was like, there's no way they're going to take this salary. There's no way they're going to do that location. There's no way 2 days a week's enough for them. But we actually created a culture, like we embraced objections. We learned to love objections. And so we actually had lots of strategy meetings and we had lots of discussions about, okay, let's learn to love objections. Let's talk about how we can dissect that. So we really understood the objection handling process. And then once you understand the objections, obviously you've got to move to more of the influencing and selling side of things. So again, I think what made them exceptionally good is one of the best sort of, objection handling people I've ever met. And then also one of the best sort of, influential people and sales people. And the final piece to the puzzle is obviously then closing. You've got to be able to close. You can do all the hard yards. You can sort of manage everything, but you've got to be able to close. So I think they were the key sort of things. So I'd say hardworking, subject matter expert, and technical skill sets, and finessing those technical skill sets day in, day out, minute by minute. Really, really important.
I think that you put that really well. That's really interesting. So, thanks for sharing that.
No worries.
That was good.
Yeah. But this didn't come overnight either. And I think it may just be rolling off the tongue quite naturally, but people actually listening to this, as I say, I always rewind to when I first started. And I even say to the modern day, I'm still learning recruitment.
Yeah, of course.
And I think anyone who shuts their eyes off to think they're an expert in the modern world, particularly with technological advancements, AI, and everything that's going on, you've got to be prepared to continuously learn. But if you're prepared to learn, then you're prepared to succeed.
But I think, obviously, I think it's safe to say, but like, if you really double down on those core things there that you put together really nicely, you have a really good chance on increasing your billings, increasing your performance, becoming better and better in your job.
And do you know what I was scared of when I first started, that I wish I'd asked for more, is more help from my colleagues. Because, if someone's doing a really good job, don't just look over to them in the office and be bitter. Befriend them. I know there's this competitive element in recruitment firms, but actually, if you build internal stakeholder relationships, really befriend your cohort and people around you, because do you know what, if they're doing a good job, you want to learn from them. And there's a thing that we have internally here that I say to people is, come to work every day and improve by 1%.
Nice.
Because if you improve by 1% every day, there's over 260 odd working days a year. That's over 260% worth of self-development every day. And it could be just from a turn of phrasing, could be to an emotional play, it could be to a tweak on an email, it could be any little thing. But if you actually really come to work every day and don't commute and coast and be something different and want to improve, you can do very, very well.
Yeah, that's really interesting, mate. So before we get really keen to get into sort of your journey so far with your own business and stuff, but so really well put there that you learned from someone in the business that you really well respected, as you quoted, one of the best recruiters you've been around. So you really tried to emulate this person, learn from this person, right? So then, just to help me out, so then billings wise, how do we do here then? Like, did you continue to improve? Talk to me a bit about that, because again, think of the people listening and what people want to understand is there'll be people listening that did bill 180k in their first year, or now in their second, third year, and still are around that 200, 250, 100k mark, but can't break through that, right? So did you continue to up the billings? And if so, let's talk a bit about how you continue to do that.
Yeah, I think, yes, I did. So it did suddenly click. So from being the first year flop, then it did continuously click. You'd be going through your numbers, and year by year, they'll be going up, and you had to ensure that you got the title promotions every year. But I think as you become established in a market, you work smarter, So the quality of my jobs, the commitment from my clients, my rates, all of the things that are important to working smart as a recruiter got better. I had more exclusive candidate relationships. I had more exclusive clients. All of these things amassed to me what I call working warmer. So if you can work a lot warmer, you're going to be able to bill a lot more, because if you're still sort of, going out there doing lots of cold BD or lots of cold work, then, you're still operating at 120k a year billing, right? There's no way you can get better. But if you've actually built up those relationships on the candidate and client side, I have a thing that we call here, which is sort of, inch wide, mile deep. And you want to be a subject matter expert and really kind of, whichever area you're recruiting in. And at the time, as I say, it was in procurement supply chain, but break that down into a sub-practice area. You want to be the expert within that in terms of knowing everyone and really influencing and working with everyone. And so I was able to do that. And so as a result of that, my billings increased year on year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really
Is that
good.
helpful?
Yeah, no, that is that is. But what I'm just curious, and I really like working warmer element there. That's really interesting. So, again, thinking of the people listening, I'm thinking, okay, so what you just said there is really cool. How can I? So if I'm right now still doing quite a bit of cold work, I'm 2 years, 3 years in, and I'd like to think I do have some solid relationships. But how did you then get more warmer work? Like, how did you then go from last year not having as many exclusive clients or exclusive jobs, exclusive candidates, etc. So how did you then start really moving into that? Just to break that down a bit more in a bit more practical sense, because I think that'd be really valuable, because that's what you did, right?
Yeah.
That's what you continued, and that then obviously in correlation meant that your billings went up in like, what was your best year in those 5 years?
So within the 5 years, I have two, because obviously my biggest achievement was I became an overall director where I had basically over 1 million sort of in terms of team and myself. And that was quite a big commitment of billings.
Yeah,
so
that's
I was
huge.
So I was very, very proud of that kind of, achievement. And then for me, from going from 100K, then sort of 1 year, I think was 180, 250, 300, sort of 350 plus. And then obviously you're moving into more of the kind of team managing.
So that's really impressive, and I know people will be like, okay, well, how did you do that? And you're already giving us some really good stuff around that. So then I'm just thinking, as you then sit, obviously, if you think, then I'm sure you would have looked back at your year and gone, right, so this is how I'm going to get even more out of that account, or this is how do you get what I mean? So just a bit more practicality around working warmer, I think would be really cool, because I think
I don't know if, in my opinion, when I was at the junior level, I didn't do enough analysis.
Okay, nice.
And analysis is very important. So I actually had 2 or 3 clients that I was doing deals with, but actually when I was doing more research into the area, I knew they're going to have a lot more appetite to hire.
Okay.
So I knew I already had the key decision makers on side.
Yeah.
And that's HR and line, because in that market you needed to have both on play. So I knew one of the professional services firms, due to research and market areas, was basically going to need to double in size. So I'd always, every end of year appraisal, I'd analyze which clients that I really wanted to penetrate and where I believe there's going to be demand. Nice. And as a result of that, I could really penetrate them further to increase my billings. And that made it attractive to prospective candidates, because if you can paint the story that you've got a track record and they can see people that have actually kind of progressed and stayed with the firm, and equally if they're going on a journey and you can communicate that journey and how that benefits their careers and what they're looking for. So I think a lot of analysis, and that's the whole point I say to people, treat recruitment as a career, because you're dealing with other people's careers.
Yeah.
So if you're not treating it as a career, how are you communicating that clear message to other people? So analysis of my clients and where there's going to be demand, and then I know where to invest my efforts, because there's no point in, we all talk about work smart, hard working.
You said working smart.
Yeah, so that's smart work. Yeah, exactly. You've got to analyze where you're going to make the money, ultimately. And then the other thing, as I got more senior, was of course I needed to make sure I passed on my knowledge and experience to my team members, because the big thing for me, and I think where I want to kind of help raise the bar of recruitment, is to change the sort of image of, well, it's just finding people jobs, or it's a bit dog eat dog, or it's just like, a bit of selling. It's sharing knowledge. Let's work together. I actually do a lot of things now with friends of mine who are owners of other recruitment businesses, and we have sort of dual training sessions and things like that. And I think the other thing for me was, it's actually passing on the knowledge to people. But the other thing for people listening in who maybe are at the sort of 150, 180, whatever it might be, don't be afraid to ask for more help.
Okay, cool.
I think people just hide under their desks and worried that they're not going to hit their weekly targets, or and also if you're not sure that a KPI, you feel it's just being given to you for the sake of hitting it, then if you can justify why you think that should be reviewed, then go and talk to someone about it, because otherwise I've sat there before when I was given targets and I just couldn't get my head around why I needed to do X. So, I'd go and have a discussion about it. And so for people listening in, don't be afraid to upward manage. And I think I was scared myself to upward manage when I first started. But now I encourage people in my team, upward manage me. I like to think I help people now, but, don't be afraid to upward manage, because that can help you kind of get better as well.
Okay. So a huge point there is, if you're not taking the time to take a step back, look at where you're making your money.
Yeah.
Can certain client relationships, can you make more out of that? Can you offer more of a service? Can you get more out of them, etc., etc.? Can obviously really enable you to know where to put your efforts, but also enable you to take your billings to the next level and these things, right? Because you don't need obviously hundreds of clients to bill more, do you?
No.
Do you get what I mean? That's the
quite
thing,
the opposite, in fact.
Exactly.
And that's where people are like, oh, we used to have people saying, oh, I'm doing some BD today. And I would look at them quite shocked when I knew they had sort of 3 or 4 good vacancies, with a client that they should be focusing on. But it's like, oh, I'm going to BD. That just says to me that they're not focused.
Okay.
And so you've got to be focused. If you've got a client there that needs delivering and you've delivered on it before, why do you not want to continue developing that relationship and growing that from sort of, a small thing into quite a big thing?
Okay. So last thing then, before we talk about your own business and the journey that you've been on, what were some of so obviously you progressed the typical route. As you said, you then achieved a really big milestone in terms of, so how big was your team in the end, or how many people did you manage?
So in the end, we had obviously lots of other sort of managers within the team as well. But when I left my directorship post, there was around sort of 20 of us in total, 22, 23,
Okay.
from
how many
joining.
people reporting to you?
Indirectly, everyone would have been sort of. So I was the overall director there with the other sort of main director as well. So I would have had responsibility for that.
Okay.
Which was which is a great honour. I was very privileged to sort of got to that sort of level. But we really worked hard to develop and get good people through the door, and there was some wonderful billers at the end of the day.
So two things that I'd be interested in that, just to get your perspective. One, look, there'll be people listening that are good billers, may want to do management, may not want to do management, but what were some of the key learnings that I'm sure you failed at when you started becoming a manager, started getting people under your wing, that you quickly learned that you had to change or adjust, that now looking back you're like, I'd never manage people like that again, or whatever? Do you get what I mean? What are some of the key things around that? I
think some of my management failures were, one, I've always been a bit of a control freak, and that's actually a bit of a bad thing when you're trying to be a manager, because you can't do the job for them.
Exactly.
You've got to let people learn from their own failures, and that's actually where SEO was quite good for me. I learned from my own failures pretty quickly. So, I was trying to do too much for them, even if it's from drafting, their emails, or to, listening to absolutely every call, all of those things. Well, actually, you take a step back, you've got to allow people to grow. And, you see all of these things, you hire smart people. You don't want to completely sort of take all of that out of them. You want them to bring their own character, bring their own style, because you've got to have your own brand. So I think for me, I would have kind of let people express themselves more, and you shape and mold rather than dictate. Nice. I think that's the thing for me that I learned, having been a bit of a control freak, having my own business, wanting to build my own things. And I was like, well, why can't you do 300K? Why can't you do 400K? But it's not as simple as that.
How did you start letting go of that then? Was it, do you know what I mean? What did you start letting these people do that typically you would have maybe had an influence on, or held their hand through? Like, was it a process, or? Yeah,
I mean, we designed, number of training. Once they'd gone through sort of training sessions, and you'd shadow them on enough candidate meetings, client meetings, and they'd shown enough, then you kind of almost let them free in many respects. And you're there as their counsel. They can come to you if it's, look, I've got a real issue with trying to close this scenario, or, I've got another agency that's, battling in on this vacancy. How can we get more commitment on it? So it's more of the kind of technical brainstorming scenarios. But once you've given them, the fundamental basics, you've got to let them run with it and create their own style.
I like. Okay, and then the last thing then, before we move on, is so you mentioned there that real honour to be at the director level, see what the business grew to. Had some really good people in the business. So like through that process then, what were some of the two things really? What were some of the common sort of pitfalls that you saw in people that prevented them from going to the next level, right? And then on the flip side of that, when you did have some really high achievers in your business, what were the common things that you saw in them?
I think they both go hand in hand, that answer. And the answer is cutting corners.
Okay.
Because certain people will be aware, people who can't get to the next level will, back to the objection handling, will brush reservations under the carpet.
Yes,
and everyone's guilty of that. And I was exceptionally guilty of that as well. You would kid yourself, I'm going to close this deal. And they didn't even know the candidate has other interviews on the go, as a basic example.
Yeah, no.
So, I think cutting corners, and being a control freak of your own business is what you've got to be. You know, your own business. So you've got to know everything about your clients, everything about your candidates, and be able to influence them, because without the information you can't do that. So I think people who couldn't progress are the ones who cut corners. So they wouldn't push to get better commitment, they wouldn't pitch a retainer to their clients, they wouldn't go and meet their clients an extra time because they needed to, they wouldn't really qualify, they wouldn't ask the challenging questions, they wouldn't challenge their candidates because they're afraid of, you know, that confrontational element. You know, if you're professional and you approach things in the right way and you're doing your job for them, ultimately, you know, there's no harm in actually asking the challenging questions. And I found people that brushed reservations under the carpet, who cut corners, and didn't want to really finesse and improve by that 1% every day. Lo and behold, they stay around the 180, the 200k mark.
That's a really good point. I like that.
Whereas the real high achievers, they wanted to improve day to day, and they were seriously committed, and they had excellent control of everything.
Don't cut corners, people.
Don't cut corners.
No, it's okay.
That's what my PT says to me as well.
Cool. No, I really like that. So, have you always wanted to have your own business then?
So yeah, it was with a heavy heart really that I left. 5 years is a long part of your recruitment journey, but I always had, and this is the thing I think you need to have, is a passion. It comes back to my point at the beginning of the podcast, that I had a passion to set up my own business and emulate what my grandfather did in the legal world.
Was he a big role model for you?
He was a very big role model for me, yeah. So he, as I say, he ran a very successful law firm in the 1950s. Leicester, where I'm from, bizarrely was the second richest city in the UK during that time, due to the commercial and hosiery trade. And so he had a very successful, you know, self-made legal practice that span out across the Midlands and had one of the largest outside of any other London law firm at the time. So, you know, that was I had real admiration for that. And I always wanted to, and this comes back to my next risk that I took, to want to have my own business. And so I had the passion, but of course I wanted to be good to my old employer. You know, I basically didn't want to go off and compete against somewhere I'd given 5 years of loyalty to, and, you know, held them in very high regard. So, you know, I moved into legal recruitment, you know, which all of my friends were sort of scratching their heads. You're a director, you've got the house, everything's going great. Why on earth would you want to move into, let alone set up a business, put your own skin in the game into an area you don't really know much about? So that was a big, big risk. But of course, there was a lot behind that in terms of research, strategy, and, you know, creating the right plan. But yeah, I guess the main drive was a passion, and there was a family kind of emulation that I want, and a legacy that I wanted to continue. Okay,
that's really interesting. And then just to set the scene then, how long have you been in business now?
So Kissooncarr was incepted in April 2016. So we're sort of 3 and a bit years old, and growing day by day, and it's going fantastically well.
Right now, and how many of you are there right now?
So there's 6 of us within the business currently. We obviously started with myself and my business partner.
So you started with someone?
Exactly, yeah. Okay. So, and I think another tip for people, if you're thinking of turning recruiter into business owner, is you've got to have good people around you, and you've got to have good mentors around you.
How the hell did you convince this person then, if you had no fucking idea about legal? And how did that happen then?
So we were actually friends. So we were friends previously. We'd followed each other's journeys, and basically we were able to sort of sit down. And they were already in the legal market and had a separate. They had a retained search business in the legal market, and one of the best headhunters I've ever met, and one of the best general kind of search people I've ever had the privilege of working with, and we shared a lot of the same values. So, you know, I needed a bit of a strategy when exiting. So, you know, I found a business partner through this relationship, and from there it's just grown exceptionally well. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I've had to work day and night, had to learn the market. Yes, of course, I grew up in my grandfather's law firm, age 15, doing the shitty photocopying. So I kind of saw what lawyers did,
and I kind of interesting content,
and I kind of knew about it, right? And I've always been interested in the law generally because I think it's such a fascinating market. But yeah, there was strategy behind that.
So was he on the tools with you, or was he just did he just support you to start the business?
Exactly. Real support, and kind of, you know, genuine sort of, you know, co-founder and real help to the business. So, you know, without that definitely would have been a struggle. So I'm very grateful for that. And I've always big believer in kind of team and, you know, working together and having the right people around you and good mentors.
Yeah. Okay. So fair to say then it was pretty cold.
Yeah, I mean, we're basically, in every market's got it saturated, but legal recruitment, there's a lot of legal recruitment agencies out there.
So one of the most common things that people ask me, right, and I'd be really interested to see how you approach this then. Obviously, you had the support and the chat that you're talking about there, which is amazing and really smart. So I guess the most common thing that people want to understand, learn more about is obviously business development, right?
Yeah.
Well, two things really, which I know was one of the things that you really wanted to touch on. So I'd really love to know as to sort of what your strategy was to go from, those 5 years, really fruitful relationships to now in this world of legal, you've got someone that obviously you've got a really good relationship with, obviously is going to add value from that side of things, surely. But obviously that's going to be brand new to you, right?
Yeah.
So there's that, and then through that comes the resilience piece, right? Because so what was the strategy and how did you start approaching and building your client?
Well, again, back to my topic of work warm. So obviously through the relationship that I had, there was a lot of kind of cross referrals and kind of introductions through that, which again, I'm immensely grateful for. And then research. I had to kind of get my hands dirty and
so
I
mapped out the market.
Had to map out the market. I'd be reading on Saturdays and, if you want to do your own business, unfortunately, you can have a lifestyle business. Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to sort of business and to be in the top of your game, you've got to make some sacrifices. So Saturdays, Sundays, evenings, I was researching, and I was really mapping out the market, and I was spotting trends, and I was spotting where we could actually kind of enter the market and where we could be different and where we could add value. And so, it was a lot of hard work, and you're absolutely right. Resilience throughout my career. I think, having that mental toughness, I think is really, really important. Okay. Because there's always going to be highs and lows.
Yeah, exactly. So before we go on to that, mapped out the market, how the hell did you start getting clients then?
So I think, again, there was an element of just being authentic. So, the name above the door, Kissooncarr, actually has a real meaning, and we have a legacy. And, the fact that I guess it helped that I had almost got sort of, 7 or 8 years experience as a recruiter. I really understood how to do good recruitment. And once I'd also picked up the knowledge, and I'd had these warm contacts as well, I was able to do it, but I wasn't afraid to take risks. I'd go and sit in front of, partners in law firms and be able to sort of, influence them through my skill sets that I'd had, because I'd get tons of objections. Why should we use you? We've never heard of you. What's your story? Why are you different? All of these things, but learn to love objections, right? Yeah. So all of my technical skill set that I'd learned from over the years that I'd really worked hard to master, I was able to implement into my new business that helped me win clients, helped me kind of grow and develop from there. So that's my point to people, that recruitment is a very transferable skill set. If you can really understand and how to actually adopt those, and don't be afraid to take risks. Yeah.
So was your approach then to try and maximize some of these crossover relationships, get yourself in front of some of these clients? So did you go clients first and then obviously start then trying to build a network of candidates, or?
No. Because actually, and this is a key point, you've got to understand your market. Is your market client driven or is it candidate driven? Okay. And again, I'd actually been historically in more client driven markets.
Really?
Whereas the legal market is undoubtedly a candidate driven market. The candidate is king or queen. Okay. So, and I understood that. So I understood that law firms are interested in, of course, providing excellent legal services to their clients, but at the same time making money, right? So if you can provide them, it's similar to recruiters. If you can provide them with a good fee generator, a good lawyer, then there's going to be appetite for them to buy. Right. Similarly with recruitment firms, someone can send me a great CV of a good recruiter that's got a proven track record. As long as they fit the cultural box, and they're a good egg, the likelihood is we're probably going to be interested in meeting with them. So I really understood that, the market was a candidate-driven market. So I built up my candidate networks so then I can go and talk to my clients with actual product. So I think you've got to be a good headhunter. That's point number one. So you've got to be able to headhunt. And again,
when you say headhunt, what do you mean by that?
So I think,
because what I visualize that, I wouldn't say when I was in recruitment I was a headhunter. I mean, so my visualization of a headhunter is, and you said there that the co-founder or whatever was one of the best headhunters that you met or whatever. So what does that actually mean? Does that mean that you're calling people at their desk and saying, look, if you have this problem, I potentially have this solution for you. Let's speak after work. Like what does that actually mean?
And I think, by the way, people dress up the word headhunting.
That's what I mean. Ultimately, what does that actually mean?
Headhunting is an introductory call. Could be an email, could be a WhatsApp. It's an introductory form of communication. That's my definition of headhunting. Okay, because people get really scared. It's like, we're doing headhunting hour now. And I remember that when I was in back in the day, headhunting hour. Oh, what does that mean? Oh, I'm really scared. I'm going to headhunt someone. Take the stigma away from it. All we do is we talk to people, we consult people, and we try and help people with further their careers, and we find solutions for our clients who are struggling with recruitment. I break it down very, very simply. So for me, it was about having sensible introductory conversations with key talent that was a demand for whether I knew there'll be a demand for potential clients, so I can go and get clients.
So we talking what, LinkedIn messages, emails, the normal lot?
I think there's doing that, but it's going above and beyond, right? Okay. So I'd know where key events were. I would know where people were kind of watching and where people were going, because you can't just be the transactional, unless you're sending and there's nothing wrong with sending LinkedIn messages, emails, and, but don't just send a generic email. Study their profile, send a really, tailored, detailed, thought out, substantive message showing how you can add value. Okay. Because if you can't add value to someone, if you're just saying, hi, are you interested in opportunities, you're working on a 1 in probably 1,000 response rate, right?
Yeah.
If you actually write to someone whose career, then, you're talking about take a step back, really think about how you can do things. And then, like I said, go above and beyond. If you know your key target market where there's going to be demand has got an event, you've got to get yourself through the door. You've got to go out and network face to face.
Mate. How can I get an invite?
Well, that's a good question, but if you think about it, you can actually quite easily get an invite.
How's that?
And that's how you brand yourself.
Okay.
Because I believe now people need to be more than just recruiters. You need to be you need to be a consultant. Okay. And we have a thing at Kissooncarr is we work cradle to grave. So we work in placing candidates probably 3 or 4 times throughout their journey. Yeah. But, actually adding value to the general marketplace. We work in the legal industry. So we actually want to add value and give back to the legal industry. Okay. So, be that in the form of article publications, be that in the form of, hosting, sponsoring events, be that in terms of doing thought leadership, do that in terms of, general other campaigns, podcasts, all of these great things. Because now you can't just be a recruiter. You've got to be able to be seen as someone, okay, I want to go and speak to X because they're just an expert in my area.
Not only have they got the best job. How is that going to make me more money?
How's that going to make you more? Well, it depends what you define as what's important to you. Because I think for me, it's important to make money, but it's also to have a good and recognized brand and reputation. Yeah. Because reputation, if you build up your reputation over the years, the money will also come. Okay. I think that's very, very important. So I think if people actually see you, similar to what I see from a lot of people, if they're really investing in their career and being seen as a real somebody that does more than just recruitment, I believe that will work tenfold. We have a thing as well here where we say contacts are great, but relationships pay, and I think that's very important.
Nice. I like that
everyone can love and know everybody, right? But actually, and people are like, oh, it's not what you know, it's who you know. To an extent, it's who knows you and who you have a relationship with. Okay. So, that's why it's important.
And that transfers to you then long term.
But I think it's important to be in an environment where, because I can understand what you're saying about making money, and it's just about the KPIs.
I'm just thinking, it sounds great, but how does that increase my billings? Do you get what I mean? That's why I asked that.
Absolutely. But I think that's where you have to move away from having a transactional view to having do you know what, I want to be a consultative, longer term, relationship driven recruiter, and understand that I may not get the win straight away. I may not break down that client.
You have that paying forward mentality.
Exactly. So, but it comes back to when you're planning your days. I'd be amazed if every recruiter in London is genuinely planning their days meticulously and being selfish with their time, because they should be, because all of this other stuff, when you say, is also outside of hours, right? Because your core time, you're going to be working smart, you're going to be working smart, working warm. So all the other stuff, the brand building and everything else, should just be an additional because you care about your career. That's my viewpoint.
Yeah. Okay, that's really that's really interesting. Really interesting point. Look, I mean that's something that I'm really passionate about, and I think everyone listening right now has such a unique opportunity to approach recruitment like that. As you said, like how you rounded that up, that everything that you spoke about there is just only to enable to do more work, to warm work.
But it's also gives you more of an interest point, because believe it or not, people don't just like to talk about recruitment. If you're looking from a business development strategy and you're looking at ways to communicate with your clients and you're looking to try and add value to them, every agency's got candidates.
Yeah.
Every agency's got candidates. But what can you tell them about the market? What can you tell them about the trends? What can you tell them about their competitors? What can you tell them that's going to add value to them over and beyond just providing the best candidates in the marketplace? And that is where you'll build a long-term trusting relationship.
Yeah, okay, really smart. So, one thing that I definitely wanted to get your experience in. So I guess, first year, how was that? Like, did you, obviously billings, did that go okay? Or like, how has that been?
Yeah, so again, I think, and it's through blood, sweat and tears. So, we are a growth on growth, year on year business.
Okay. So what does that mean?
So that means, it means I was prepared to put skin in the game from year one. So initial investments repaid plus profit in year one.
Yeah.
Year two, 15% growth on year one. And year three, 33% growth. So we've had double digit growth year on year since starting. And that's because we've fundamentally worked to the basic principles of what works.
About,
exactly. And I think otherwise, if you have such a scattergun and lack of focus, lack of strategy, and I was guilty of that as a recruiter at my junior years where I was just not focused, then, lo and behold, you're busy, but you can't break past a certain level.
Yeah.
But my role now, and why I was keen to get involved in these sort of discussions, is you move away from recruiter to business builder. And recruitment owners, yes, there's an element of being involved in recruitment, but it's ultimately, you've got to bring the best out of the people that work for you and with you. So I genuinely care about everyone who works here and wants them to do very, very well.
Yeah.
So I think you've got to hire people that you want to work with. Culture is very, very important. And then you've got to think about, right, how can you drive the business day by day by day by day? I've enjoyed my personal journey, and it's not been, it's been ups and downs.
That's what I was going to say, because obviously that's like honestly amazing achievement. But I get messages of people that they're just one man band. They're sitting in their living room right now, or sitting in the home office. Like, this is fucking horrible. This is way more tougher than I thought it was. This is really testing my resilience. So let's just talk a bit about that, because that's amazing that you've achieved that. But what were some of the real tough times, and how did you push through those?
I've had lots of tough times, and look, even day to day, you have your struggles. But I think one of the tips I'd give people is don't just sit there in your living room. Find mentors. I've been very proactive in putting my network and getting into my network and really finding new mentors that can help inspire, educate me, and share their journeys. And it's not just necessarily recruitment business owners mentors in different, maybe in sales and insurance. So finding people who've got a proven track record of being successful, because mindset's very, very important. We've all been there. You're having a poor month, or you've just started your business, you're in your living room, you're having a bit of a downer, you're doubting yourself whether you can do it. Don't just do that. Actually go out there, be proactive, network, find mentors, and get some ideas and really kind of upskill yourself. I find a lot of people back to the commute and coast and stagnate. You got to find something new. If something's not working, yes, you can kind of, have a bit of a down day, but don't stay down. You've got to be proactive. So, go out there and, speak to good, credible people that can actually help you.
Okay. I couldn't agree more. I mean, obviously I'm 10 weeks into starting my own business. I've got 2 mentors. Definitely helped, and I've had a couple of other people that have really been helpful. But I think, again, let's sort of break that down a bit, because people listening, it's like, okay, definitely mentors, such a quite common word now, right? And it's something that I'm definitely really passionate about. What's your advice to approach people and find? Because it's great saying go find these people, but where the fuck do I find them? How do I approach them? No doubt these people are busy. Do you get what I mean? So what's been your experience in finding and approaching these people?
Yeah, I think, again, comes back to being proactive. I think you've got to be proactive. And it's also, I don't just think you should find someone who's been successful. You've got to make sure that they're right for you. So, if you actually follow, there's so much stuff publicly available now. It comes back to cutting corners. You can actually cut corners in terms of finding mentors. You can easily find anyone that will give you some advice. But if you actually want to research and find someone that you think can add value to you, then target to them. And then you can write to them or call them with genuine passion and enthusiasm for why you want them to be your mentor. I think that's very, very important.
So how would you approach that?
So I think it's...
Out of interest.
So the way I've approached it, actually, I believe I guess it's a recruiter in me. I'm continuously working. So one of my recent mentors is actually through a family connection. Okay. On my wife's side, someone who's run a successful business, and kind of why I'm using him particularly for a mentor is he's someone who's scaled and exited a business. And done it on multiple occasions, and sort of had a lot of challenges along the way, and done it from an organic level. And obviously that's aspirations that I have, and look to do. So, I've been able to sort of talk their language, and sort of, I've made sure I've muscled myself in on certain little events or even family things. It's going the extra mile. It's being prepared to, drive 150 miles up to know that they're going to be at a potential, event where you can have a kind of one-on-one chat with them. But, research, there's loads of things online. There's loads of events you can go to. There's lots and lots of things. You can talk to people. If you're a recruitment owner, you can talk to other recruitment owners. There's no harm in that. Talking to people. So basically being proactive.
And then how is it most impacted you then? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what's the typical type of relationship? Just again, out of complete curiosity, maybe people listening are interested. Like, does this then, you tend to check in with these people once a month? Do you meet them? Do you then say, look, these are the challenges I'm having? Is it something you can always check in with? Like, what's the typical relationship, and how is it? Where would you say, how has it most impacted you in running your own business?
I think it's most of mine tend to be on a sort of formal, quasi-informal basis. So it's more about being there. I think, if you're going to find a mentor, I actually find someone who's actually potentially going to have a genuine care for you. So, sometimes just being able to pick up the phone and say, I had this strategy, it's blown out of the water, it's all gone wrong. Actually just being a voice, someone that you can talk to and have an outlet. But more structured than that, I think it's actually about having, some sort of regularity. So I tend to have monthly kind of progressive, discussions, talks around subjects, areas, identifying problems and going to them with solutions, not just asking, can you help me? It's like, these are my ideas. How do you think we can improve them? That's the other thing. Even when I do my own mentoring, when I'm mentoring people in recruitment or in other industry sectors, I say, don't just come to me for expecting answers. Come with some ideas and let's actually discuss how we can improve them. I think that's very, very important.
So how has it impacted you then, would you say, in a nutshell?
Firstly, it's been very good for mental well-being in terms of actually keeping positive and keeping focused. So I think it's been very, very good for that. It's helped me in terms of increasing profitability and productivity of team members. And it's made it fun. You know, it's good learning about and hearing other people's journeys and actually implementing new things. Because then I love learning. I think, in any industry, you've got to love to learn. And so I love learning new things and being open to learning because, when I first started, I was kind of shut off to the whole idea of, I know what I know now. I don't need to know anything more. But that's so wrong. Continuous learning. So that's how it's really helped me.
Okay. So before we finish then, mate, mindset.
Yeah.
Mentioned it a couple of times.
Yeah.
What's been your journey with that then, and how clearly the mentorship's helped? Like, what's been your journey with that, and how have you got better to cultivate a mindset that serves you rather than leaves you just being negative all day and not being able to be productive and not focused? Like, how have you cultivated that, and what's been your journey with that?
Yeah. I mean, it's been very interesting because I always thought whether recruitment was for me, when I had the bad first year and I was just, I was doubting myself, most definitely. I think sometimes pinch yourself. I think people beat yourselves up, because you are in recruitment tends to be a competitive environment, but take a step back and think, actually, what have I achieved? If you actually have achieved, celebrate those successes. So I think the one thing I always say to people is celebrate the little wins, because maybe doing a deal or that annual target is so far off and you're having a bad month. But actually, celebrate, if you break into a new client or, you win a candidate over that you haven't been able to for the last 2 months. So for me, whatever it is, I've always kind of celebrated the mini wins to kind of keep me eternally positive. And so important, surround yourself with positive people, and that's as far to say as, if you've got a very...
If you've got an office full of negative people, how do you do that?
Leave.
Really?
That would be one of my... Well, I mean, you can either try and change the culture and try and be positive, but there's nothing worse than being in a negative environment with negative people, because that's, there's a thing about sort of, group vine and, how that negativity can...
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree
grew
more.
violence. So no, I'd take action of your own career. You know, if you feel like you're in a negative environment, it's bringing you down, either do your absolute best to try and change it and raise it with management and with directors and try and change it around, or leave.
Yeah.
Very simple.
I think that's fair. I think definitely, I mean, especially in the world of recruitment, right, it's bloody difficult sometimes. And then if you're even then, if then people are feeding you even more negativity in the sort of ups and downs that you're experiencing, then that's difficult, right?
I had another tip from one of my old bosses that I thought was great as well. And they always had a kind of shut off mindset. So every day we used to say, shoot from a 10. But, you know,
shoot from a 10.
Shoot from a 10 every day. But the way they did that was, you know, no matter what was going on in their personal life, you know, maybe they're having a relationship issue, or maybe they've got a health issue or whatever. But whenever they came on their commute to work, because they weren't a commute and coast person at all, they would say, once I go past that red post box, on the way to the office, I forget about everything, and I'm on game show. It's like when we used to play sport back in the day. When you cross the whitewash, you come to play, right? Or when you lace them up, you come to play. So whatever's going on, you need to be able to have a block out mindset. So I actually have, every day when I come to work, when I go past a particular building, whatever's going on in my life, I shut it off, and it's like, I need to shoot from a 10 today. So if I can shoot from a 10 today and achieve my goals, then I can be productive. Because if all I'm doing is dwelling on all those negative thoughts, it's bringing me down, I'm unproductive, I'm influencing others with negativity. It's just a really, really bad place to be. So that's just a tip that I got off someone that I use in my day to day.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And what you're saying there is that every single day, be present.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's pretty much what you're saying. It's
and
like
take
every day,
opportunities.
Yeah. So it's like every day when you come to work, it generally, obviously it's cliche, but it is a new day, but it's another, it's a brand new opportunity to shoot from a 10, as you said.
Exactly. You know, ask your director to go and shadow a meeting that you'd never dream of asking him to do. You know, ask someone to go, push yourself, push yourself to develop day to day. And you'll get more satisfaction from it as well.
Yeah. Wicked, mate. Well, look, before I finish, I always like to ask, what's going on in your world, mate, that's worth shouting about? What are you excited about?
Well, aside from Kissooncarr, which I'm really, really excited about, we're on a genuine journey, and it's been an absolute whirlwind in a positive way. What else is going on in my world? I'm trying to get back fit. I used to play quite a lot of sport competitively, so I had a lot of friends that represented the country in rugby and cricket and did very, very well. And that's actually been sort of mentors from afar that have actually gone on to succeed. So I'm trying to get back fit.
How are you finding that? Because honestly, I think in the last 10 weeks, so I've always been like, all right.
Yeah.
Not going to completely.
You're looking in good shape today.
No, I'm okay, but like I'm just classic. I'll just easily fluctuate. 6-8 weeks, I'll be on it, and then it will take like 2 weeks where I'm not that on it, and then I'm back to fucking square one. So like, how have you found, obviously, maybe even in recruitment, but also just running your own business, that I've definitely found that in the last 10 weeks that has definitely, not consciously, but it's just ended up sort of sacrificing a bit, and I found it just more difficult. Maybe it's not just an easy excuse, but like, how have you found that? That must have been, has it been a bit of a challenge then? It
has been a bit of a challenge, but health is wealth at the end of the day. So you've got to be able to, you've got to be able to be dedicated to doing it. So it's like everything. You've got to set yourself goals in recruitment that drives you. We talked about the internal drive. I've set myself a goal that I want to get to a certain weight, and I want to get to a certain fitness again, and really, really enjoy it. And the other thing, it's back to work again, but we're doing some really high profile events coming up that I'm really excited about in our market.
How quite a few people mention events.
Yeah.
How have they impacted your business?
So, in a very positive way. Back to you said to me, well, I'm a recruiter, how can I get into, a networking event? Well, like I've told, we discussed about building a brand and actually getting your name through a door through not being known as a recruiter. They've impacted our business because the two events that we're doing, we're the only and we're the first legal recruitment agency to actually be involved in the societies.
Oh, wow.
Because they typically say no recruiters. But because they see us as different, they understand our message, our journey. And so they see us as trusted advisors, and they see us as actually consultants and more than just recruiters. So it's impacted us in terms of our branding, being known as a very relationship driven kind of advisory outfit. So it's been very, very positive, and that's led to more referrals, more recommendations, has it and more placements.
The bottom line.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly. It's got the referrals. It's got the place candidates.
That's amazing, mate. I think hearing more and more about events, and I think I just really believe that recruiters are in such a unique position to facilitate great events, put some amazing people in the room. If that's from a candidate perspective, being able to have access to some brilliant decision makers and senior people in businesses that that they never dreamed of getting access to, or learning about them, or hearing their perspective of the market and these things. I think recruiters are in such a great position to facilitate that.
There's so many resources out there now as well to make it happen.
Very true. So, go on.
The other thing I'm trying to publicise is now job specs are old-fashioned.
Job specs are old-fashioned.
So why are we not getting our clients to, when you go and meet them, let's do some video specs, right? We're doing video interviews. Why are we not flipping it the other side, and actually showing off our clients, and actually that sort of imagery and stuff like that. There's so many new, quirky, innovative things. I mean, that's not overly innovative, but there's so much more people can do with resources available now. Just go for it.
Yeah. Nice, I like it. So, question I always like to ask, mate, before we finish is, if you could communicate to every single recruiter out there, they'd take on your advice, they would listen, they'd start using your advice tomorrow, what would you say?
If you see this as a career, I would generally say never, ever, ever, ever give up. I think that's, you've got to be prepared to go through the hard times, and then as an extension of that is you've got to be prepared to improve yourself day by day. So if you're coming to work day by day and you're not looking at how you're improving and you're hitting the same KPIs or you're hitting the same targets, then you've got to really take a step back and analyze that and really think about how you can improve. And I always say, surround yourself by the best people. Never be the best person in the room, like I'm not today, the master of podcasts next to me.
No,
but in all seriousness, surround yourself by very, very aspirational, strong people that are high achievers, because that'll bring the best out in you.
Amazing. It's been a pleasure.
Cool. Thanks ever so much.
Cheers, mate.